You wanna know how to find it. Seek it out when they hide it. You know it's in the bag when it's an easy grab. Come on, take a chance now. Go, 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 geocache, geocache. And if you need help, we're right there in a flash. If you got a question, just call in and ask. Uncover the stash on the Geocaching Podcast. The Geocaching Podcast.
Welcome to episode 310, recorded live on July 24th, 2013, Changes in the Tech of Caching. I'm your host, Daryl W4 with
Head Hard Hat.
You can join our live chat room and video stream and watch us as we record live this episode and participate with other listeners. That can be found at geocachingpodcast.com/live. Our voicemail line is 630-31-VOICE. Find us on Twitter at geocachingpodcast.com/Twitter and Facebook at geocachingpodcast.com/Facebook. This episode is sponsored by listeners like you. Well, welcome back, Head Hard Hat. How's it been going?
I'll tell you what, it's been going great. And you know, I just realized, depending on how fast I click off my mute button, I either start out being Head Hard Hat, Ed Hard Hat, Hard Hat, or just Hat. So that's all in the timing. So just, if you ever wondered why, that's how come. But no, doing really good, Daryl. It's going to be one of those nights. I had way too much cough syrup, and it is just one of those things. I don't know what I'm going to say, so folks, keep your bleeper button ready.
Yeah, no kidding. And we've lost our fearless leader tonight as well.
Yeah, and he's out, unfortunately, with some family stuff, and we're missing him already because we need all the help we can get. But no, I think it's going to be really, really good. This week, didn't do a whole lot in the geocaching part, but what I did do was get a new geosnippet set up. Now, if you haven't heard and you've been living under that rock and finally came out, it's really cool. Geocaching.com is going to have the 31 Days of August challenge. So what will happen is each day of August, you have the possibility, if you get either a geocache or go to an event, you can get a digital souvenir for that day. So you can get up to 31 for the 31 days of August, and there's some extra ones out there for the block party and also for International Geocaching Day. So you can really rack up those souvenirs if that's the type of thing that you like collecting. So what I'm doing for GeoSnippets is I'm going to give a little quick tutorial on how to get all that prepared so that you can go out and with dealing with work, dealing with home, and making sure that you get your planned out routes to what you need to do to get those geocaches for each one of those days, because if you've ever been on a streak, it's going to take some time and effort and research to do this. You're not going to be able to do it fly by night unless you're in a very saturated area. But that's what I've been working on this week. Daryl, how about yourself?
Well, I haven't gotten any caching either, but I have been playing a little bit more with the new Munzie app and catching the last couple of Munzies that are nearby that I can catch. And being reminded just why I'm not as fond of Munzies as I am geocaching. They have their place. I do enjoy them, but if the Munzie placements just don't seem to last as long, for one.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I was curious about was I kind of heard something about premium with Munzie. Did you get anything on that? Because I was starting to hear some not so happy people.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much about that, but Premium has been available for over a year, and I've been a Premium member for pretty much a year and 3 months or something. But the Premium membership over there gives you a bunch of extra features, including you get a little star Munzie that's worth extra points when you scan it, or when anyone else scans it too. But the interesting bit is with Munzie 2.0, they're actually giving extra filtering options and things like that to the premium members. So that might be why people aren't so happy, is it's now more a pay-to-play than it had been previously.
That might very well be, but it actually sounded like it was premium only, and I didn't do any research yet. But we'll have to look a little bit more into it and see exactly what people are feeling and why. Because it's another aspect. It's not geocaching, but it is an alternative, and that's what we do.
So let's move into our topic of the evening then, and that's going to be changes in the tech of caching. And we'll start by kind of talking what it was that we each started out caching with. Bad English there, but you get the point. Back in '05 when I got started, really I had the black and white serial-based GPSR, which was a Magellan Sport Track Pro, and I had to print out all the cache pages. Eventually I got into the color GPSR with the Meridian color, and moved up from there. But it was a kind of thing that it was really tough to get any data onto those units through the serial. You're doing a lot of stuff, even at that point. Whenever you were traveling out of town or hotels, that kind of stuff, you really didn't have good internet access if you had any at all. So we were talking about modem speeds and trying to download the files, trying to get the little bit of cache information that we could and get that printed. It was really, really rough to do just about anything. And as time progressed, we got better internet connections, faster, more bandwidth. And I moved up to like the GPS Map 60 CSX, which really made things a huge improvement because that had the USB, and suddenly things actually got onto the GPS from the computer. It didn't take you 20, 30 minutes to download 200 caches, so that was a big improvement. And we got more involved with handhelds. I was using the Palm Tungsten C eventually with the Mobi Reader, which at the time when you had a Pocket Query, you could get a Mobi Reader document and make all your notes in that, which was great. All you had to do was go and highlight the cache information, add your notes, you found it, when, all that kind of stuff, and you could go back and manually log after that. And then we got into CacheMate when Mobi Reader got killed off. Thank you, Amazon, for buying and killing it. So we had to do a lot, but even in that first year and a half that we went through a lot of those changes, those features really helped improve the game. And I really, since we got the paperless caching in the devices, I really don't see that we've changed much except for on the smartphones. Now, Head Hard Hat, what was it that you actually started your caching career?
I actually started out, and I had it around my desk here in the GeoSnippet Studios. I actually had my notebook, my original notebook, with 200 finds, my first 200 finds in there. So back then, we were actually using pen, pencil, paper, writing down the codes, writing down the spots, different interesting aspects, drawing pictures, little maps, things like that. It was a much more creative time back then. I also remember printing off reams and reams and reams of cache pages, just tons of them, because you got to have the map picture on there, because how are you going to find it without that, without having that overlook? So yeah, that was a very paper intensive time back then. I ventured out with my first set of paperless qualifications, because my first GPS was a Nuvi. That was always fun. So I didn't even have a standard GPS back then. And I had my first smartphone, I believe, was a BlackBerry. I think it was like an 8310 or an 8330. I can't remember the model number way back then. But the very cool thing that you could do with that, that really started out the paperless aspects to it. So I had that. My first handheld paperless experience was actually with a handspring device. I eventually moved on to the Palm TX, so that really helped as well with CacheMate. That was a fun thing. That was, like you said, Daryl, that brought the freedom. Not only did I not have to write things down on there, but all I had to do is mark find it or did not find it and move on to the next one. So it brought a lot with that. But I needed more. I wanted to be more mobile. Laptops were available, but they were large bricks, very hot, burned power. There wasn't any really easy way of keeping those going. We wanted that power to use, GSAC, those type of things. Notebooks came out. Oh, what great things. They're lightweight. The battery was a little bit better. We got that internet and that Wi-Fi connectivity in there. It was a lot of fun. But still very, very slow when it came to things like that. So those were the old days. And, it's kind of funny when you said internet connectivity. Remember back when that was all wire connectivity? You had to have that Cat 5 to hook in to be able to get that internet access. What we had to do to make that connection as opposed to nowadays.
Yeah, well, you got started several years after I did as well. So you had, you had in those 3 years, a lot of improvements had been made, and just hearing the differences between how you got started and what I had to do to get started. And I know that I was even in great shape compared to others who got started before me, because I actually had geocaching icons on the GPSR. I had that little treasure box.
You didn't have just the arrow in the distance.
Right. Well, and I had maps on all of my units. So many people had, do you want a dot, do you want a box, or do you want an X?
Yes.
If you had mapping. And a lot of the time you didn't have the mapping at all. So, the huge, huge changes and improvements just in those first few years. And like so many other things, as it starts to stabilize, a lot of the stuff gets kind of settled in, and you're making improvements, but not as obvious and not as quickly as it seems you used to.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and you have to remember, back then, most of the stuff that we got into with that was more on the high-end stuff. That was cutting edge things that we were cutting into. One of the cool things that we could do was to be able to take that BlackBerry and tether it to get that, use the actual phone service. Oh my goodness, what is this? This is elfin magic. To be able to hook up the internet through my phone? Wow, how do you do that? And we had to learn. You had to do some tips and tricks and a bunch of other things to get stuff like that to work. And sometimes the cellular companies were not happy.
Oh, no. Well, and they still aren't if you don't pay them for the privilege of doing that.
Yes.
But at least you can get things. Now, if you really want the wireless, you can just flip a switch. It's always an extra charge in shared data or something like that. You have to check with your carrier on how they're doing that. But flip a switch on your cell phone and you have, or smartphone. Most cell phones don't do it yet, but
it will eventually.
Yeah, most smartphone or most feature phones don't have full data packages either. So you get a smartphone, you flip the data switch, and you can hook anything you want up to that via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Or if you have a whole bunch of devices that you want to go running around with and need Bluetooth or actually Wi-Fi most of the time. I don't think most of the like MiFi hotspots have that, but you can get those mobile hotspots. And do you remember Cricket, when they first started out, their big thing was going to be putting in the cars those dedicated hotspots that did nothing but give your car a Wi-Fi cloud.
Yes, that was going to be taking over the universe with that.
Yeah, and we actually talked about it. Now it's something that fits in your pocket and does the job as well, if not better.
There you go. It's amazing.
It's no longer something that you have to install in your car. And some of the cars now, if you have one of those USB thumb drives, you can plug in the thumb drive and it will do the Wi-Fi cloud for you in the car.
Yeah. You remember where you had to go if you just wanted to get connectivity, GPS connectivity? You either had to keep the little pod in your car or your trunk or something like that, and it would Bluetooth to your computer so that you were able to get some kind of GPS hookup in through that as well.
See, when I got started, we didn't even have the Bluetooth yet. That was still, several years away. We actually had to do the serial with a big box that ran on AA batteries, I want to say. So it took like 4 AA batteries, and you had this serial cable. And if you didn't get it in the window, you didn't get a signal.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of serial, I mean, talk about going back to the time. Do you remember where your GPS had to hook in through your serial port to get in?
Well, that's what I was talking about. Is it would take me 20 minutes to get 100, 200 caches in, and that's all that I think my first GPSs would carry would be like 200 waypoints.
Mm-hmm.
But it took like 20 minutes to get that many caches in there, and then when we got with the GPS Map 60 CSX, boy, that changed everything, because now it took a minute to get caches in, not 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that alone was a huge, huge benefit.
And that took little time for the software companies to get adjusted for that as well, so that you could take the larger files in and be able to work with them. And you still had to go in under the covers with a lot of the GPS devices and get into the directory structures to have that work right. So everything wasn't, push a button and it loads it for you. You had to figure out how to make this sucker work sometimes.
Well, and even then, the waypoints didn't have any information really. It's you have a and depending on your GPS, we'll say typically about 8 to 10 characters that you could use for the name, and maybe you got a little bit of extra information, 20, 30 characters, and that was about it.
Yeah.
You didn't have much information, and people are trying to pack everything in, and that's one of the reasons GSAC first became so popular, was it gave you the back end to easily get everything onto that GPS, and it gave you the tools to actually change those names easily to whatever you wanted to do. So a lot of people were taking out the GC at the start, and then they'd put like the number of the difficulty or the number of the terrain or some combination of both in there as well to give them an idea of what it was. Some people were putting like the -T for a traditional cache and that kind of stuff. So all kinds of cool things that GSAC allowed you to do to reduce that need to have paper with you.
And you took away a lot of the proprietary stuff when it came to the individual GPS devices. So you didn't have to worry too much about if you had the Garmin or which version or things like that. It was able to have the database to formulate and format the stuff the way it needed to.
Yeah, well, that was the GPS Babel that they used as a back end, gave them all of that great functionality. And GPS Babel is an amazing program, and the back end for so much different stuff that talks with GPSRs. And if anyone wants more information about that, we did do an episode on GeoGearheads with Robert Leip, who is the developer that started that project and still maintains it. And you get a lot of insight into how that all works from that episode. But it was just not all that fun to deal with getting stuff in and out of the GPSs. And even now, people still complain about using it, and that's why a lot of people like using the smartphones so much better, is because you don't have to futz with those at all.
Yeah, you cut out the middleman and go.
Yeah, and the smartphones really did change so much of the way that caching happened, because you don't have all of that pre-planning that you had to do. Even the earliest smartphones, a lot of the apps that you were seeing did nothing more than send your location to geocaching.com and pull back the web page of the caches around you. Yeah. That's all they did.
And that was elfin magic. I mean, that was, holy cow, you could do that real time. No setting up, no downloading onto your GPS. There you go.
Yeah, and you're logged in, so you can do all your logging and stuff that way. And there was also that WAP website that they had set up for the feature phones to use. The phones that had internet access but not full browser access. It's basically a stripped-down web page, which we've talked about that before. And man, we used that so much for tracking the trackables, moving them in and out of caches, because it was real time. We could put right away that trackable went into that cache, so someone else knew right away that they could log it. We didn't have to worry about any of those kind of problems, and we could look up all of the information for those missing trackables, all from our phone, which was a pain in the butt when you're dealing with T9 or whatever method of text entry you're doing with that stupid little 12-character pad.
Oh, yeah. And one of the things that was interesting, speaking about trackables and just plain logging for your geocaches themselves, when technology comes along and we start using it, there's this period of time where you have the people that jump on it right away. Then it takes quite a while for the rest of the gang to catch up with you with a lot of that. And so you always have this pause that deals over with people that are saying, well, why isn't this being, uploaded immediately? Because people out there may take 2 weeks before they load stuff in because they haven't got the technology yet. They're playing the game the way they play it, but I'll tell you what, for a lot of geocachers similar to what we do, we love being on the cutting edge and getting stuff, the high-tech toys, and play with it. It's not everybody's ability to do that, so sometimes you gotta wait.
Yeah, it's a lot of it changes, but what are we actually using now as our go-to? I've pretty much switched to just the iPhone with Geosphere for all of my finds. What are you doing at Art?
Well, I kind of have a suite of things. I'm not always stuck down to one thing because with the different technologies that are out there, some days some things work better than others. And depending on if I'm doing some overall planning of an area, I use an iPad too that I take along with me. I have different types of software that are in there that can do real time. It can do where I can just save the GPX files and pull what I need if it's in an area that doesn't have a strong signal. It's great to use in the car because that way I can see a full map of a full area and say I want to hit this one and I don't want to hit that one because, and go on that way. So iPad 2 is a great way of using that. Also for all the different things like blogging and things that I need to, where I stop off at the fast food place and hook into the Wi-Fi and go that route, it's a great way to go. But it also has the 3G when I don't have Wi-Fi. I use a Android Galaxy S3 for my go-to phone when I go out. Those are obviously great for your quick hits. Not so great when you're going out into situations where it's deluging out or you're going to go into heavier terrains. So, even now, that old Garmin Nuvi, when it comes to types where I do routes, if I'm going for a long distance, I will sit there and pull down a route out of geocaching.com, match it up into my Nuvi, and that way, I'll tell you what, there is a convenience when you're driving down the freeway and you don't know if you're going to want to go geocaching or not, and you hear that little bing, and you know that a geocache is coming up. It's nice to have that when you want to do things like that. So I will have the Nuvi out as I'm traveling with the route information loaded in. That kind of gives me a full perspective of real-time and pre-planned geocaching, so that works out really good. And a lot of stuff when I actually go out into the terrain where I don't want that smartphone to get damaged, I have a Garmin 60 CSX that I use as a backup, and I also have a Magellan Explorer 710 as my main go-to for really going out and actually looking for those deep woods type of geocaches. And if it means having to take the information out of the Nuvi or out of the smartphone and physically putting it into the device because I don't want other things to get damaged, then so be it. That's the way I go that way. How about yourself, Daryl?
Well, as I mentioned, I am pretty much using my iPhone 5 with Geosphere as my go-to device now. Even when I do take out my GPS Map 62, I'm using that iPhone as the logging device. It's just got so much better screen. Better for entering notes for just about everything. That I really don't use the map, GPS Map 62 that much anymore.
Right.
It's a great unit. I use it for placing all my caches, and I use the iPhone as kind of backup for that as well. But really, no matter how many times I take out that GPS Map 62, I'm finding the caches from the iPhone, and part of that is I find I'm not as picky about where the cache is actually, where the GPS is actually saying it's at when I'm using that iPhone. It's much more a sight and go because of the way that I use it. I look at the iPhone. Okay, it says it's so much distance in this many feet, whatever. Turn it off so I can conserve some battery on it, and then I go and walk that way. When I have the 62, it tends to be more of a, okay, I'm walking. Okay, it says it's right about here. Stop. Okay, where is it? Yeah, which we all know isn't the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
But when I've got that 62, I've kind of trained myself that the thing's so accurate that it should be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really only the 60 CSX and the 62 that I really did that on, and then like the Oregons and stuff that I've had in between. So it's kind of part of why I don't do it that way. And the other part is it's just a bother to take that thing out and use it when you're already using the iPhone, and the iPhone does, with Geosphere at least, so much better job of giving you that cache information, and it does a real time, and it has a great keyboard. So it's one of those deals where I really want to use my GPS, and I do sometimes, but most of the time, like 99% of the time, it's just my iPhone.
Yeah.
And I've even done that with a Nuvi. I've got a Nuvi that sits doing nothing anymore because I use the iPhone with Navigon, and right there on the iPhone, I can just send the GPS or send the geocaches from Geosphere right into Navigon, and that really does make it a lot easier because it's all on that one device. At the same time, it's all on that one device.
Yeah.
So it becomes a problem. But it just seems to be the workflow that I use because it is so quick and easy. And with things like Geosphere and with the iPad and Navigon, I can sit there across multiple devices. I can do my trip planning on the iPad, send the route files, or send the, well, yeah, I guess they're route files, but they're not quite the route files that we're used to.
Right.
But Navigon will actually let you, take and plan, put all those points together and send a route file between the two units. So I can sit there on the iPad with its nice, big, bright, beautiful screen, plan out the whole trip, send that to the iPhone, or plan sections of it and send those little sections to the iPhone. Whatever I want to do, it's there, and it just really makes it so much quicker and easier because of that live connectivity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you find yourself doing more real-time, spur-of-the-moment type geocaching as opposed to planning day trip type things?
Not really. It's kind of been the same thing. We keep 1,000 cache pocket query going, and then that just comes to us every day. So it used to be that we'd load up the GPSR a couple times a week and have a current set with us whenever we wanted to go caching. Now I still do the same thing and load that into Geosphere, but it becomes much quicker and easier because it's just a matter of go and update that. Okay, done.
Yeah, and you can make so many different pocket queries and spread out the area so much that you want. Nowadays, you're pretty much covered.
Yeah. Well, for the stay-at-home kind of stuff, that's all we need. Now, when we go out on an impromptu trip, that's a little bit different, and I do find myself able to cache where we wouldn't have been able to cache before.
Mm-hmm.
So that does make it much more easy. And I find that I'm looking up information much more often in the field. Things like, oh, we have this puzzle, and I don't quite understand what this means. Let me go and Google that.
Yeah.
And that's something we never used to do back in '05. It's like if you didn't know all the answers when you went out there, you didn't go, or you hoped that you'd find them on site and just gave up if they weren't there.
There was no checker back then that you could just plop in now and verify your coordinates.
Right, and your best case was that, or your best hope, I probably should say, was that you had the cache owner's phone number and could call them and catch them. And that's the other thing. A lot of caches at that time still didn't even have phones, cell phones.
Yeah.
We were much less dependent on cell phones then, even though pretty much everyone had them. It's not like it is, even 5 years later in 2010 and now. I don't know anyone really who doesn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
Even those who don't really use one have one.
Yeah. I wonder if the actual phone a friend type things have dropped considerably because of the sheer amount of information that's available to everybody now.
See, I think it's actually picked up a little bit now because it's around here at least the caches have increased in complexity enough that you're having to call the friends more often, but you're needing more information about either what that clever hide is, because it's not going to be as obvious. A lot of that's because they've put them in more urban areas where you have to have a little bit better camo, or because the puzzles are that much harder that you need the assistance and can't figure it out yourself.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, that's going to do it for this week, because we are actually at our half-hour mark. But if you have any experiences with tech across the years that you want to share, by all means, call those in to us at the 630-31-VOICE number, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for subscribing to the Geocaching Podcast. We have many continuing expenses beyond that our sponsors are kind enough to cover. We really appreciate the financial support from you, our audience, and you can help us at geocachingpodcast.com/support. As a thank you, you'll be given a link to our Plus feed. Join us each Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern at geocachingpodcast.com/live and watch us as we record live. Our shows, notes, and links to all of the past shows can be found at geocachingpodcast.com. You can call in at 630-31-VOICE anytime to leave us a voicemail.